all of Matt Nisenoff's friends and my friends. We have the amazing Matt Nisenoff. He is so nice. He once did a meme for me where I wanted to have a meme of Trump. And we'll talk about that and many other things about Matt's life in a second. But before that, I want you to know what we're talking about here with Matt. He's currently the showrunner, the creator, the mind behind Politipod, the podcast. And that's a podcast for fun with politics and governance and more and more and more. I asked him what his top accomplishments in comedy were, and he said he's been a DJ in life and museum worker, a military spouse. I got to hear about that. And is giving comedy and podcasting a run for its money. 5 years into a podcast on SoundCloud. It's called Politipod. So Politipod, if you want to have fun with politics. So let's get to know him. He's got a website that's under development, and who knows what else he's got up his sleeve. Let's go to Matt. Hi, Matt.
Hello, Linda. How are you?
Wonderful. Do you like it when people read your bio?
Yeah, right. It's always fun.
It's always interesting. It's so heartfelt. So what's been going on with you? You're on the East Coast.
That is true. I'm in New York City, and that's where there's a lot of things going on. Of course, yes. The concerns for the coronavirus and being prepared anytime you go out for the past couple of months. We just had the curfew lifted. There was a brief couple of weeks where we had a curfew in place, first at 11 p.m., then 8 p.m. So there was the curfew on top of the concerns for health and wearing masks and gloves every time you go out. Now, I needed it even more so because a few years back, I had a heart attack. And so I'm in that health risk group that really requires following up on that kind of stuff. So I've been doing that every time. And so there's that excitement. And then, of course, more recently, the protests and people getting out in the streets. And I went to one of those too. So
yes, good for you.
Yeah,
who
absolutely.
Says that us older people aren't hip?
Right, exactly. And because it is so important, because the issue of Black lives really is serious and really affects all of us. We all have to work together to do things to help everyone out.
Yes. So talk to me a little bit. I want to go back to the first thing that you spoke of, the pandemic on the East Coast. And we all know that the pandemic has hit the East Coast much harder than out here where people aren't even sure it exists. So have you had friends and family members struck with the COVID-19 virus?
It absolutely does exist. I have not had, none of my family have been stricken with it. However, my wife does work in healthcare. And so she's at a hospital every day, which makes it an increased risk for her. So she does, not only goes with the mask and the gloves, but she's also regularly tested so that we can get ahead of it if it becomes a problem. Fortunately, it hasn't been.
Yes.
So yeah.
So let's go back to Black Lives Matters. Now that we got the COVID out of the way, we're all focusing on equal rights for people of color in America. So in your neighborhood where you live, are you an essential worker or are you at home right now?
I'm at home.
Okay. So in your neighborhood, within a 5-block walk of where you live, have there been protests?
No. I am in a section of Brooklyn in the southern part of Brooklyn, and it is not the nearest park, any place that people could get together to assemble is over 1.5 miles away. So in the immediate couple of blocks, there have not been protests. There's 1 block over is a Hispanic neighborhood. 1 block in the opposite direction is a Hasidic Jewish neighborhood. So there's not been anything in between those two neighborhoods, as far as protests are working together.
So do you live around Sunset Park and Borough Park, or do you live further south?
I'm east of Borough. I'm between Borough Park and Flatbush.
Okay, got it. I thought you were in that vicinity with the way you described it.
Yeah, yeah.
I lived there in the 90s and I sold ads for the Brooklyn papers.
Oh, right.
And my territory was Brooklyn Park and Park Slope. No, Sunset Park and Park Slope. Two
Wow.
very vastly different neighborhoods.
So yeah, definitely different, and shows the full spectrum of Brooklyn.
Yes.
I'm down in Midwood, which is a sort of, as I mentioned, it's sort of that almost a breaking point between the Hasidic community and some of the, as I mentioned, there's a lot of Hispanic families on the next block over. And so, if you know Ocean Parkway.
Oh, yeah.
Roughly. Yeah. So
Yes.
It's along Ocean Parkway and down by Avenue M.
Okay.
So LMN.
I lived at 86th and 16th Ave.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We had to go up and down Ocean Parkway to get there, or we chose to.
Yeah, right.
I miss Brooklyn. Brooklyn is so dope. Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
let's talk about where exactly did you grow up? What was your family like? Who encouraged you to go on with your funny?
Wow. Well, actually, I grew up down in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., a place called Chevy Chase.
I love Chevy Chase. Has it always been called Chevy Chase before Chevy Chase?
It actually, for a very long time, we were the town of Chevy Chase long before he came along. And actually, the town goes back, scores of decades before he came along. And actually, there's a rumor now. I don't know if it's true, but the rumor is that when he was that he's from Arlington, he's from the Virginia side, but that when he was looking for a stage name, that's how he became Chevy Chase. He knew our town, knew of the town, and he was sort of trying to give it a little bit of a stick by taking it as his name. So nice. I've never met him or talked to him, so I don't know if that's true or not, but that's at least the rumor that goes around.
Yes, awesome. So what kind of family did you come from? Middle income, lower, upper? How many in your family? That kind of thing.
Sure. Well, middle income, myself and my brother. So mom, dad, and two sons. And really middle. And actually, the thing is, my parents moved there in the mid '60s, and we're Jewish. And actually, the residential covenants were still in place. We bought the residential covenants in the 60s and 70s were written agreements that said that you wouldn't sell your house to minorities. You wouldn't sell them to Jews and blacks and other people. That in that area were, the document that was used to sell houses. And so technically we weren't supposed to be there. But the guy who was leaving, who sold us the house, apparently wanted to sort of piss off the neighbors. So what did he do? He sold his house to the first Jewish family in the area. So yeah, we did not have comfortable relationships with our neighbors for a while. But eventually there was...
How did that affect you? Did that make you reach down to be funny, not to get beat up?
Well, actually, there was not a lot of there were not a lot of physical confrontations. There weren't a lot of fights, I must say. But I think there was that sort of out and about. This was still in the time, the 70s and the 80s, when you used to go out and play in the street. So that's what we did. And And so there was sort of unpleasant. There was nothing overly physical aggressive, but there was taunting, and there was like, we'd bring out toys to play with sometimes, and sometimes some of mine would go missing, that kind of stuff. I later found out that with the army men, we used to play army. There was one kid who used to try to bury my army men in the sand and then come back later and dig them up and steal them. So there was that kind of stuff. Minor harassment, but nothing overt and nothing physical, fortunately.
Now, in your family, who were the funny people?
I think my mom had a better sense of humor than my dad, and she always encouraged it. She always encouraged, she would be the first one to laugh when things, when I'd say things, and would certainly be more encouraging in the things that I would try to do. So mom was the one.
And so what kind of sense of humor did she have? Like observational, dry, witty?
I think she always appreciated wit more than anything else. And she had been a teacher, and then for a number of years had been a librarian, which was work that she absolutely loved. So that more wit-based humor was always something that appealed, and could always get a laugh from mom.
Nice. So between you and your brother, does he have a sense of humor to the degree that you do? Or is he more factual based? Because siblings usually rival each other by doing the opposite of each other.
Right. I'd have to say I couldn't answer that question unless I knew if he was watching or not.
Gotcha. That's an unfair question.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
That would be, yeah.
He has a sense of humor. I think he has a good sense of humor, but he has a different perspective on things to the degree where it's always good when I see it. Let me say it that way.
Awesome. I tell jokes. My mom had a bar for years, decades. And anytime people come into bars and tell jokes, and she wrote every joke down. And she would call my sister to tell my sister a joke. And the joke in the family was she would tell my sister the joke and have to put my sister's husband on the phone to explain it to her. Yeah. But I always thought that my mother liked my sister better. And I remember telling her that, trying to explain it to her later in life. And she said, but you're the one that always gets the jokes. I thought,
actually, I
should have heard this when I was 5, but whatever.
Right. Actually, that was a big thing my brother used to tease my mom about for years was, oh, Matt is the son that you love better. And that whole that's the sibling rivalry stuff. And so he ribbed her about that for years.
Wow. Yeah, so yeah. In your life, you said that you're a military spouse. I want to have you explain why you chose the words military spouse.
Because it is a good description. My wife, when we met, was in school, and it was being paid for by the military. So she was brought into service, and
meaning she enlisted.
Well, yes. And we were first sent to Virginia prior to her. Officially she was in the service, but we were in Virginia, and then sent off to Ohio, and then from Ohio to Japan. Actually got put out on a base in Japan and Okinawa.
Are we talking Air Force?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we were on an Air Force base on Okinawa for a couple of years. And so I was there, but she was in service. She was doing her duty, and I was doing some of the civil work helping out in the school system, preschool system that they have on base for the families.
Was she
So
enlisted or officer status?
she was an officer.
And what was her job function in the military? And by the way, tell her, thank her for her service from me. I'm a vet.
Surely. Yeah, well, she's an
No, I'm not.
officer.
I'm Linda. I'm not Shirley.
But I'm film. Yes, she's a doctor,
What type of doctor?
psychiatrist.
I have to go now. Time's up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. I bet she had her hands full in the military, or did she?
Oh, plenty. The psychiatrists were not only overbooked, but the Air Force was being used by the other services. They were pulling doctors from the Air Force. So there was even a shortage there because the doctors were being borrowed. So very, the deployment and the redeployment and the constant redeployment, it does a lot, and it's much more serious, I think, than people think about.
Yes.
And yeah, so it's very important that they're there and they're doing that work.
Yes. One of the things that really bothers me in the world, America, whatever, is the stigma people put on anyone with a psych evaluation or a psychiatric diagnosis. It bothers me so much because it makes the problems worse for those who have issues. I know we all know people that should go to a shrink, but don't because of the stigma. And we all know people who have offed themselves because they haven't reached out for help.
Exactly. Absolutely true. The stigma is very insidious, and it's as you know, the suicide rate has actually been increasing because I think it's once again because of the constant psychological pressure that's put on people to do beyond the norm, and it's not always recognized, much less given the appropriate support that's really needed to save lives.
And I'll tell you something else that sticks in my craw since we're so, since we're so all about me tonight.
Sure.
Every time there's somebody that goes off their rocker, right, in the press, they just go ballistic or postal, then they're like, well, it could have been a veteran with PTSD.
Yeah.
Oh my God, don't get me started. Like, it could just be that somebody just had something else wrong with. You can have PTSD without being homicidal or suicidal. There's people that have other diagnoses, but they seem to like the post office. Let's go to the beginning of the problem. The post office lets veterans get 10 extra points when they apply to work at the post office. So they have a higher number of employees who are military, who could have issues from battle or whatever, trauma. And so if they don't get treated right and they choose to go postal, that doesn't mean every time somebody goes postal, it's going to be a veteran with PTSD.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And the fact is that PTSD can be caused, as you mentioned, by trauma, and that's any trauma. So people can get it from domestic violence issues at home that have nothing to do with military service or right. So to assume that the two have to be together is ridiculous.
You can get PTSD from watching TV.
It really is. Yeah, it is. Mental health is a thing where there's nothing wrong to recognize that the fact is that it's wide reaching. and it can be even depression is a form of is a mental health issue that should be taken seriously, and is not, and it's not even really recognized that those are the same, that depression is a mental illness. So a lot of people have all sorts of the spectrum is very broad in the population, and people don't want to recognize it because it's scary, or because it makes them uncomfortable. But that's really not what's important. What's really important is getting people recognizing that there's a problem and trying to solve the problem, doing something that will be helpful.
Yes. So you were in the school system over with your wife when she was active duty around the world. And so how was that experience for you? Did that make you use your sense of humor to cope with all the military brats?
The kids were, I mean, the kids showed a wide range of that, but for the most part, they were kids. So you can, it's not difficult to find a way to enjoy that, because you can play around, you can kid around, as long as you're within the structure and you're getting the learning across that they need to get, because that's why you're really there. But yeah, you can make a little bit of a fun time out of it, and so I did.
So
I
let's
enjoyed that
fast
as well.
forward to when you decided to do comedy. When did that happen, Matt?
There's been a little bit of a comic element, I think, in a number of things that I've done over time. So initially, it wasn't even that was the goal, as much as when I was a disc jockey on a radio station. Of course, there's a little bit of it wasn't like a morning show zoo thing, but it was evenings on air. And so I tried to introduce a little bit of a humor element into what I was doing on a station that didn't particularly want to emphasize humor. So, but I found ways to try to get it in a little bit here and there, because that's what I wanted to do, and that worked nicely. At the in some of the other things I've done, once again, it wasn't the primary thing to do, but there's always a way to sort of get something in, because it's something universal. It's something that helps people to understand you. It's something that helps to be able to communicate with people when humor is an element. So there's always been a little bit here and there and trying it out, and then so then having met people who were in comedy and people who were doing it full time and that kind of thing, then I came to a point where it was like, well, I have an interest in politics, and I've worked for elected officials, I've run for office, but I want to see if there's a way to sort of, with everything else, if there's a way to use humor to get the point across, and to help try to bring information as well. So then this idea came up of, well, how about this podcast? And because it was, everybody has a podcast, so why not? And so that was the original basis to it. And I brought in a couple of people from Facebook groups, and a couple of people who have been in comedy for a long time, and asked them who else would be good to bring in. So actually working with about a dozen people, doing every 2 weeks we come out with a new episode, and we keep it sort of focused mostly on politics, but try to find that humor in it to get it across. And so there's a team that's working on writing, and there's a team that works on presenting, and there's a team that does putting together collections of one-line jokes for a segment that we do 2 or 3 times in the podcast. There's a group that works on sketches, putting together a half dozen sketches for every episode. And then there's some political content that goes in that's put in by 1 or 2 people. So It's all, but the real key thing for it is that there's that comedy, there's that a way to make it humorous.
Now, have you gotten up and stage in some of the clubs?
I have not. We do have some people who have done clubs. There's from down in Maryland, there's a fellow by the name of Tom Myers, who's been doing clubs for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Tom Bickle, who's over in California, is a stand-up comedian, been doing it for years. Up in New York, there's Rhonda Handsome,
She
who
was
has been
on
doing it for,
she was on a thing today, up in Long Island. Yep.
working with the documentary that she and Marsha Warfield were a part of. And Rhonda was actually not only showing the documentary, but the director and Rhonda were taking Q&A afterwards to talk some more about it. So yeah, Rhonda Handsome and Tom Blumenfeld from New York, and comedic writer Paul Lander helps out from time to time. So there's a whole cast that is quite familiar with stand-up.
Wonderful. That's awesome. So, what else is in the future for you with your political comedy, or what else do you plan on doing?
Well, right now the big step for us is, as you mentioned, we've been going for about 5 years, and we've been putting it together every 2 weeks.
That's
Thank
huge.
you.
That's huge.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Most people don't do anything for 5 years. Marriage is included.
One of the yeah, actually one of the guys who had cycled through, somebody who was with us for as a writer for a little bit, and then left. When he left, actually he said the problem is you run it too much like you're constantly doing stuff. You know, he wasn't expecting it to be so intensive with getting things done.
Wow.
But so the thing we're working on right now is putting together a website. So we're working on that in the background.
Is it going to be politipod.com?
Well, now somebody had grabbed that. So we're trying to figure out how to negotiate or what to do. So I don't know if it will be that. We have politipod.org, so we can always use that. But that's one of the issues actually has been how to handle that or how to work a way around that. It's one of these services that grabs a name and then, tries to get you to pay some big bucks, which we don't have. So I don't know if we'll be able to work that out or not. But that's part of it. But we're also on a small New Hampshire station. There's a internet radio station in New Hampshire called IPM Nation, and Matt Connerton runs it. And so you can also hear us on Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And you can hear us by going to ipmnation.com/live2. And that's the number 2. And so the episodes are also heard Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. But so between those two sources, that and SoundCloud, we're trying to add in the website and also hoping the website can allow us to access things like getting onto iTunes and getting onto some of the bigger sources of distribution. So we're going to work our way towards that. And then there's also been some talk behind the scenes about possibly doing, as you were saying, some kind of live show version. So where there's 3 or 4 of us on either of the coasts, maybe we can put together something where we do a video link so that you can see, a night of Politipod humor being 2 or 3 people live in front of you, and then 2 or 3 people being zoomed in by video or not. I don't know who would be providing it, but a video link so that you could see somebody doing some stand up from the West Coast for you. So that's something that we've kind of talked about. We haven't done it, but that could be something in the future too.
Wonderful. So I know you sent me the link to your radio and told me your website's under construction, but you went through quite a few things there. So anything you added that I didn't get, will you send it to me so I can cut and paste it onto this post?
Sure. Yeah,
If I
absolutely.
don't have something, I want to have it to plug everything about you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate
How-
that. I'll be happy to get it to you.
Do you have children?
Sure do. Yeah.
How many? Is that 3?
That's 3.
2 boys and a girl?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well done.
Do I look like the Long Island medium? Somebody told me I looked like her and I didn't know how to feel about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I'd rather have a Long Island iced tea, but whatever. So, how old are your children?
They are all teenagers. So...
Are any of them twins? I'm feeling there's a twin in there.
No, fortunately not. And actually, the 2 boys do get upset when you say that. I'm not going to show them that, but yeah, that's there's a lot of people who will look at the 2 boys who go, "Oh my God, you guys are so similar. You guys are twins," and they're like, they just, it gets right under their skin.
Yes, I don't doubt it. I was a twin. I have a twin brother.
Ah,
yeah, and we like our own identity.
exactly.
And we're twins. We don't like it.
Yeah, right.
So what ages are your children?
They're all teenagers, so 15, and 13.
You have 2 that are 15 that are not twins?
16 and 15.
Oh, 16 and 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be that there's 2. You'd be a
Close.
busy boy.
Close, but not cigar.
Yes. So do any of them plan on have a future planned out? Because there's usually one in the family that knows they're going to do something with their life.
Well, actually, the middle child, I think, has a real, actually all 3 have helped out doing voice work on the podcast from time to time.
That's super.
They'll lend a hand and there'll be a voice during a sketch or something like that. And so, the middle child has a real penchant for voice work. So there might be something more entertainment based there. But right now everybody's focused on what to do to get through school, fortunately.
So I gave a teaser to everybody that's not listening earlier. Nice. That you did a meme for me probably 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
What was the meme? It was something about Trump being half this and half that.
Trump with makeup. It was putting blush and eyeshadow and lipstick on him.
Yeah, because at some point, why was it that I decided to ask for that? Were people wondering if he was really a man or a woman?
Not that I recall.
So long ago.
Yeah, it was a while back. I'm not. I honestly, off the top of my head, I don't remember the particular circumstances.
I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I have this brilliant idea. I need a meme. And so I went on Facebook and I said, can anybody do a meme where one half of Trump's face is male and another half is, I think it was when he was so mean to Rosie O'Donnell.
Oh.
Or something like that. But anyway, Matt made the meme and I paid him and it was awesome.
There you go.
So is there anything you want to say about staying sane in an insane time, or how to hang in there in a rough business, or what you've learned in the Politipod that other people could learn from? Anything, any wisdom? You kind of look like a rabbi, I'm not going to lie. Were you in Fiddler on the Roof?
Very nice. Yeah, exactly. No pay us. But there's well, no, I certainly don't have any wisdom, but I will say that I think the part of the reason for the podcast, that humor is really, even in the normal circumstance, comedy is necessary, and is the thing that really can help get people through a tough time.
Amen.
So with things now being as ridiculously ludicrous as they are, that there's even more of a need for something that there's less of an access to, because people can't do stand up, and of course it's going to come back and probably very similar a form as it's been, because things will drift back to being the way they were. But it's now's the time for it more than ever. And so the way to get it, I guess, is by doing that very thing, is taking advantage of the podcast and the Zoom cast, like you're interviewing people on Zoom. That's just another way to access some humor and some a way to help with getting through. So stick in there, keep going.
Yes.
And I'd encourage people to check out all podcasts, not just Politipod, although I will certainly encourage them to check out Politipod, soundcloud.com/Politipod. And as I mentioned, I'll send that link to IPM Nation.
Yes,
so that you,
that's the one.
Put that one out too, because that's almost a more radio-like setup, where it's a scheduled play. But whatever it is, I listen to podcasts. Part of my day is taken up listening to some of the podcasts that I enjoy, and some of the funny stuff from, frankly, all over the world. I mean, I listen to BBC4 shows, and I listen to things from all sorts of things from both the United States, and a friend of mine from Scotland does a chat type format. It's not even necessarily humor, just him and his friends in Fife in Scotland sit down and they just chat for an hour.
How do you have time for all this? You're running Politipod. You've got groups of people working on projects you're managing and orchestrating, and your children are involved, and oh my gosh, you are something else. So nice you took time to be on here.
No, I absolutely a pleasure to do it. And that's just everyday life. You do things, and if as they say, if you want something done, give it to somebody who's busy.
Yes.
they're gonna take it in, and they're gonna get it done. But as I also said, we do new episodes every 2 weeks, and there's a reason behind that. We're certainly not going to be able to do a weekly show, but we can do it at a pace where every 2 weeks it is possible, and we do it, and we've been doing it. So of course I'm very proud of the team of people who really get it done, and I certainly play a part of that as well.
So in the world of politics, which I detest, by the way, I hate politics because it does nothing but make people argue or debate. And I know good comes out of it, but usually not. And so who is your favorite political funny person in the world that people should know about?
Wow.
Or in America? I don't know. Whatever you want to do with that question.
Yeah, I mean, I look at folks like Will Durst. You want to do the more political stuff, you can dig into your archives and find Von Meter. And of course, then there's people who add
political content to what they do. Folks like Lenny Bruce and Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle, and so Will Durst is the sort of guy who does more of a politically based humor, and actually he's had some health issues of recent. So his wife Debbie is doing I think it's a GoFundMe to help out with some of the things that he's going through. So I would encourage people to look into that a little bit if they can. But there's a real example of using putting the focus on politics with humor, and doing it at a very high level. Recently, actually, a thing that we've done at Politipod has been include from time to time interviews. So every couple of, when we can arrange it, we have somebody come on as a guest. And recently we had Alfonso Bowden. Alfonso Bowden, yes, Alonzo Bowden, who is is one of the stars of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, and he has his own podcast as well. And there's another example of a guy who he doesn't always do political content, but he puts some in. He gets some in because he's making particular points as well as throwing in the everyday humor as well. So there's a good example as well.
I love him.
Yeah, absolutely. Lewis Black.
Oh my God. Have you had him on?
Oh, no, we have not, but I would be, that would be huge. That'd be huge.
That guy gives me chills just hearing his name. Yeah, and I hate politics. I hate politics.
But there you go. But he knows
I love Lewis Black.
He knows how to get it across, So and once again, that's that same level of high level of being able to get the message across in a way that makes it funny, that makes it palatable.
Yes, exactly.
So definitely the sort of the guy who'd one of those guys who you can use as an example. Yeah. Stan Freberg. I mean, I'd even throw in Stan Freberg in that mix.
I don't know who that is.
Okay. So Stan Freberg is a comedian from the 50s.
What?
He was built up to sort of be the next big radio star in comedy. And it was the late 50s, just where that changeover from radio to TV was happening.
Yeah.
And he got crushed in that wave. Because his thing was he was focusing on the radio thing, but his comedy, he wound up making a number of comedy records, and actually then after that went into advertising of all things, but his content was not as overtly political, but always undermining sort of authority, always undermining the status quo. So he's really, first of all, he's just funny, but beyond that, he really is intellectual as well. So matter of fact, one of his big albums was the History of the United States of America, History of the United States Volume 1. He never made a Volume 2, but he did, I believe, make a Volume 3. And the Volume 1 is just so utterly hilarious. His take on all the early events in history, in U.S. history, just outstanding. Do yourself a favor.
How do you spell his last name?
Freberg. Freberg.
Say it again.
Freberg. Stan Freberg. And History of the United States of America, Volume 1. teachers have been influenced by his take, because once again, he's able to make it so funny and hilarious. It draws people in. So teachers around the country have even wound up using his albums to draw students in and say, well, that's not what happened, but now that you're laughing about it, do a project, find out what really happened, look into it. So he's actually been influential. And I believe he died just about, oh my goodness, just a few years ago. But he was still the all the voices that he worked with, all the people who were supporting him on his album are all those people that you loved, who were the voices of cartoon characters, who would go on to be cartoon characters in the 60s and 70s. The supporting cast with Rocky and Bullwinkle, the guy Jess White, who wound up being the famous washer repairman on Maytag Repairman. Jess White was a voice on these albums, and just a cast of characters that will just knock your socks off. You'll recognize them when you hear them. But I would highly recommend that.
Lovely. So remind us, Politipod is on SoundCloud, and you can go on there anytime and see back episodes. It's been going for 5 years. So it's soundcloud.com/Politipod.
Yes, soundcloud.com/Politipod. And then each episode has its own link. But if you go to Politipod, that's the main page.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, as you say, you can go through backlog. You can go back to the very earliest episodes. And they're all there. And we name the episodes instead of do numbers. So you just have to pick out the name that you like.
And then remind me, say it again, but you'll send me the link about the radio show. Where do they find the radio show? What time of day, East Coast, what day of the week and what time, and where they find it? What's that called again?
That's on a internet radio station called IPMNation.com/live2. And that's every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So 9
IPM, like Indigo, Paul, Mary,
Nation.
IPM radio /
IPM Nation.
IPM Nation.
.com and then /live2.
LIVE and the number 2.
Yes.
Got
Yep,
it.
and that's the channel. So yeah, and you can hear the first run of each episode there on Wednesday morning, and then it's put up on the SoundCloud page for now, and you can check out the entire catalog, and hey, let us know what you think.
And are you on YouTube, or is that passe?
Not passe, but one of I mentioned that we had some issues with the name. We originally took on the name Politipod, but then somebody who didn't particularly like our perspective picked up on calling himself Politipod and doing the opposite view. He contacted us and said he wanted to be included in the show, and I said no, because I said no, this is the thing that we're doing, and if you want to do it, come on, and if you don't, I'm not interested. So he did his own thing and called it Politipod for a little while. So he used YouTube and we used audio. So we don't currently have a official thing on YouTube, although Tom Myers, who is one of our contributors,
Mm-hmm.
Does have a presence on YouTube, and he won't put up the episodes, but he will occasionally take one of the sketches or one of the songs and put it up on his page and on his YouTube channel. So if you can find Tom Myers, you can also see a little bit of our stuff, and that links into us. So you can always check us out that way. We're on SoundCloud and IPMNation.com. We also have a presence on Facebook, both a Facebook group and a Facebook page, and both are go by Politipod. And we have a Twitter account, so at Politipod, where we put out the memes. I made that meme for you in part because we've had a history of occasionally putting out memes related to a current event or something that's going on. So we try to make fun of it that way with a quick meme out the door. So check out at Politipod on Twitter, and you will also be able to enjoy some humor that way.
Thank you so much. Please let me know about those links you just went through also in the radio station. And tell your wife again, thank you for her service from one veteran to another. And
Absolutely.
tell your 2 boys and your daughter, go get them. The world's your oyster.
I'm with you. Absolutely.
Awesome. So lovely to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. And it's great to get to know everybody. This has been the funnest part of my comedy life ever.
Excellent. And thank you, Linda. Thank you for doing it. I mean, it
You
wouldn't
bet.
happen if you weren't behind it and making it happen and following up and getting the work done on your end. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for
Thank you.
continuing to do it.
Thank you so much. Have a great night and God bless
as well.
you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Everybody's talking.